I gave my life to the family business. Then my father gave it to my useless brother. I don't know if I've ever hated anyone the way I hated my father the day he handed over the family business to my brother. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about the time I spent building something I thought was mine. The nights I stayed until 2 a.m. welding broken machinery while my friends went out drinking. The vacations I skipped because it's quarter end and we need all hands. The relationships that withered because the business always came first. I missed birthdays, weddings, and even my own damn college graduation because I was fixing things he broke. And for what? So that my younger brother, who floated through life like the world owed him something, could one day waltz in and be handed everything I built? 15 years. 15 years I gave to that place. It wasn't glamorous. It was a metal fabrication company started by my grandfather and kept alive through sheer grit by my father. When I was 15, I started sweeping the floors there after school. By the time I turned 20, I was managing a third of the workforce. When I hit 30, I was basically running day-to-day operations while my dad took more time off for fishing trips and long weekends. My brother Ryan, meanwhile, was trying to find himself, which is code for living in the guest house rent-free, smoking weed, and writing half-finished screenplays. He'd bounce from one harebrained business idea to another, burning through family money and patience alike. He showed up to the shop maybe once a year, usually when he needed to borrow something, tools, a truck, or a few $100. No one ever expected much from Ryan, and somehow, that always worked in his favor. When he showed up sober, on time, and wearing clean clothes, everyone acted like he'd cured cancer. Meanwhile, if I took a single weekend off, Dad would remind me how leadership doesn't punch out at 5. So yeah, when Dad called us both into his office one Friday afternoon and told me he was stepping down and handing control of the company to Ryan, it felt like a punch to the gut. Worse than that, it felt like I was being erased from my own life. And it only got worse from there. My earliest memories of the shop aren't even of working. I was just a kid hanging around after school, waiting for my dad to finish up. I remember the smell, oil, metal, cigarette smoke, and coffee. Guys with rough hands and louder laughs. My dad walking through the floor like a king, barking orders and making things happen. I looked up to him like he was a god. By 15, I was pushing a broom. Not for money. He said it would build character. I worked summers, weekends, and during winter break while other kids were out skiing or gaming. I hated it sometimes, sure, but I felt like I was part of something, like I belonged. When I graduated high school, I had a scholarship to a decent state college. I made it through one semester before Dad called and said he needed help. 2 welders had quit, a big order was late, and he didn't trust anyone else to get it right. I came home just for winter break. I never went back. 1 year turned into 5, then 10, then 15. Over time, I became his right-hand man. I knew every bolt, every blueprint, every client. I handled payroll, order materials, did scheduling, managed people, and fixed machines. When we almost lost our biggest contract because of supply chain issue, I stayed up for 3 days straight rerouting shipments and calling in favors to keep us afloat. He told me I saved the company. Still, he never put my name on anything. I brought it up once, casually, just asking if he ever thought about an official succession plan. He gave me this look like I'd asked to sleep with his wife. You want me to just hand it all over? You think I'm ready for the nursing home? That was how it always was. He needed me, but he'd never say it. I wasn't working with him. I was working for him, even when I did more than he did. And because I never complained, he assumed I was fine with it. And Ryan? Ryan didn't even pretend to care. He spent most of his 20s working on a film, which as far as I could tell involved sitting in coffee shops and posting deep thoughts on social media. He got into crypto. He dropped out of it. He got engaged, twice, and both times left the women because they were too demanding. He didn't want a job. He wanted a vibe. Our parents never held it against him. Mom would say, he just needs time to figure himself out. Dad would grunt and change the subject. The rest of the family treated him like a rescue dog who couldn't be expected to do tricks. Meanwhile, I was killing myself keeping the shop running, and if I was 5 minutes late, I got a talking to. I remember one Christmas. I was 26, and had just pulled 3 straight weeks of overtime because of a huge government contract. I showed up to dinner dead on my feet. Ryan strolled in wearing some ridiculous silk shirt and passed out dollar store gifts, stuff he probably bought last minute. My present? A coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Brother." Dad laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. That night, Ryan got drunk and knocked over the tree, broke 3 ornaments, and didn't even apologize. Mom patted him on the head and said, "At least he showed up this year." And then there was the time I saved us from bankruptcy. 3 years ago, our second largest client pulled out without warning. We were weeks away from missing payroll. I restructured our loan, refinanced some equipment, and negotiated a deal with a smaller client to scale up. It took every bit of energy and willpower I had, and it worked. When I told Dad the good news, he clapped me on the back and said, "That's why I keep you around, son. Not thanks. Not you saved us. Just, that's why I keep you around." I should have seen it then. I was never going to be seen as a partner. I was a tool, a reliable wrench in his drawer. So when he told me he was retiring, I assumed this was finally it. That he was finally ready to acknowledge all the work I'd put in, to make things official. I was so damn naive. The meeting wasn't some big dramatic boardroom event. It was just the 3 of us, me, Dad, and Ryan, sitting around the dented metal table in Dad's office. Same office he'd used for 30 years, with the same faded calendar on the wall and the same chipped mug that said "Boss Man" in Comic Sans. I thought he'd called us in to make it official. A handoff. Some kind of succession plan. Maybe I'd finally get to hear him say he was proud of me. He started by saying he was retiring at the end of the quarter. 63 and ready to enjoy life for once. I didn't blame him. He'd work hard. He deserved a break. I smiled. I even clapped him on the back. Then he said, "So I've decided Ryan's going to be taking over." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. I actually laughed out loud. But no one else was laughing. I looked over at Ryan. He gave me this tight, smug little smile, like a kid who just stole a cookie and got away with it. Then I looked back at Dad, waiting for the punchline. He leaned forward, all serious now. "I know this might come as a shock, but I've given it a lot of thought. Your brother's ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. "He's never even run a shift, let alone a payroll. Does he even know where the breaker box is?" Dad waved that off. "He's got potential. He's got ideas. And he's got the kind of temperament this place needs right now." I stared at him stunned. "You mean someone who's never worked here a full day in his life?" Dad frowned. "You've always been dependable, son. But you're wound too tight. You run hot. The guys respect you, but they're scared of you sometimes." Ryan connects with people. He listens. I actually stood up. I couldn't sit there and listen to that garbage. "Are you kidding me? I gave you my 20s. My 30s. I gave up college, vacations, relationships, everything. And you're giving it to him." Dad stood too. He wasn't shouting, but his voice dropped into that cold, flat tone he used when he was done with a conversation. "You've been fairly compensated." Fairly? I almost choked. I've been living paycheck to paycheck because you couldn't afford raises, and now I'm supposed to clap while you give the company to someone who's never put in a minute of real work. He raised his hand to cut me off. "This isn't about punishment. Ryan needs this. He needs purpose. You've already proven yourself. You don't need my validation." I didn't even know what to say to that. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking. Ryan finally spoke up like he was doing me a favor. "Hey man, I still want you to be part of the team. We can figure out a role that fits. Something with less pressure, you know? Like operations support. Or mentorship." Mentorship. He wanted me to mentor him while he sat in my father's chair and called the shots. I turned and walked out. Didn't say a word. I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd burn the place to the ground. Later that night, Dad emailed me a transition agreement. It was full of corporate buzzwords and legalese, but the message was clear. Take a 6-month payout and help Ryan get his feet under him. After that, I'd be free to pursue other opportunities. No ownership, no stake, not even a title. Just a check and the door. I didn't respond. I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at the wall. I felt hollow. I kept thinking of all those mornings I'd opened the shop before sunrise, all the nights I'd stayed until the last truck was loaded. I'd never asked for applause, just a future, and now it was gone. given away like a party favor to the one person who'd never earned a damn thing in his life. I didn't show up Monday or Tuesday. I let the silence do the talking. Dad didn't follow up. Ryan didn't text. They probably thought I'd cool off and come crawling back. They didn't understand something fundamental about me. I don't crawl. For 3 weeks after that meeting, I barely left my apartment. The place was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional text buzz I ignored. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat properly either. I'd open the fridge, stare into it, then shut it again and go back to sitting on the couch like a broken appliance. People talk about grief like it's tied to death. But losing the business felt like I lost myself. That place wasn't just a job. It was my entire identity. Every scar on my hands, every line on my face, I earned them there. I didn't know who I was without it. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how easy it was for them. Dad didn't call. Not once. Not even to ask why I wasn't showing up. 15 years, and he couldn't be bothered to check in. Ryan sent a single email 4 days later with the subject line, "Need access to vendor portals." No greeting. No, hey, hope you're okay. Just his name at the bottom and a list of logins he wanted. I didn't respond. Eventually, friends started reaching out. Some had heard rumors. Others just noticed I'd gone quiet. One of my closest buddies, Jake, who used to run purchasing for us, offered to meet up for a drink. "I heard what happened," he said, sliding a beer across the table. "I was trying to wait for you to bring it up, but I'm going to say it. That was some cold-blooded shit." I just nodded. I didn't have the energy to explain. He leaned in. "We all thought it was going to be you. Hell, you were the business. Everyone knew it. The only reason half the guys stayed as long as they did was because they trusted you. That stuck with me. They trusted you. I'd spent so long trying to earn my dad's approval, I'd never really thought about how much respect I'd built on my own. Quiet, solid, real respect. Not the cheap kind you buy with a title or an inheritance. Still, I wasn't ready to move on. Not yet. A week later, I drove past the shop at night. Lights were still on. Ryan's car was parked crooked in Dad's old spot. I sat across the street for 20 minutes, watching through the dark windshield. I half hoped he'd see me. Maybe come out. Say something. Apologize. He never looked up from his phone. That was the last time I went near the place. I knew I had to do something. Anything before I rotted in my own bitterness. I started tinkering in my garage. Fixing things. Rebuilding old tools. It felt familiar. Safe. I've been doing it since I was 15. Only now, no one was telling me how I was wasting time or doing it wrong. Jay came by one afternoon and saw what I was working on. "You ever think about starting your own shop?" he asked. I laughed. "I don't even have a drill press." He shrugged. "You've got more than that. You got skill and loyalty and about a dozen people who'd follow you tomorrow if you open the doors." I didn't say anything. Not then. But the idea stuck. The business was gone. My family had turned their backs on me. But maybe, just maybe, that didn't have to be the end of the story. Maybe it was the beginning of a better one. It started with a rented garage and a single order. Jake had been right. People were watching. Word got around that I was out, and a few vendors reached out quietly. Nothing dramatic, just, "Hey, if you ever get back into it, let us know." The kind of conversations that felt casual but carried weight. Like people were waiting to see what I'd do next. So I gave myself a goal. One job. Just one. Nothing big. If it went well, maybe I'd keep going. If not, at least I tried. A guy I knew from a local machinery parts supplier needed a batch of precision brackets welded and delivered in 2 weeks. His usual vendor flaked. I told him I'd do it for a fair price, no promises on scaling. He said, "If it's you doing it, I trust it'll be done right." That hit me harder than I expected. I'd gotten used to being relied on, but not respected. There's a difference. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something for myself, not to impress my father or bail out my brother. I borrowed gear, bought second-hand equipment, turned the garage into a sweatbox of sparks, fumes, and noise. I worked 12-hour days, slept on a cot in the corner when I had to, ate too many gas station burritos, but I delivered that job 2 days early under budget and a spec. The supplier came back the next day with a bigger job. Then another. Then Jake quit working for my brother and asked if I needed help on the books. That's how it started. No fanfare, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet shift in gravity. Within 6 months, I had a shop space with 2 welding bays, a rented forklift, and a team of 5, 3 of whom used to work with me at Dad's place. We called it Ironworks North. Simple, solid, no flash, just good people doing good work. Clients started coming over in whispers. First the small ones, the mom-and-pop factories and contractors who knew me by name. Then came the medium-sized ones, the ones who'd been unhappy with the new regime but didn't want to burn bridges too fast. Every single one of them had the same complaint. It's not the same anymore. Apparently, under Ryan's leadership, morale was tanking. He made changes no one asked for, automated systems he didn't understand, outsourced supply contracts to cut costs, and started talking like a LinkedIn influencer with no clue how the floor actually worked. One guy told me Ryan tried to start a podcast. Another said he held a vision board workshop instead of a quarterly safety review. You can't weld a vision. And the old crew? They started trickling out. I didn't poach anyone, but I didn't stop them from finding me either. One welder showed up on a Saturday with a toolbox and said, "You got room for one more?" Another emailed me his resume and added, "I'll take a pay cut if it means working for someone who gives a damn." I paid them what they were worth. Always. We didn't grow overnight, but we grew right. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, just quality work and respect. I finally started sleeping again. And not just because the business was doing well, but because I had my evenings back, my weekends. I took my first real vacation in over a decade, just a long weekend by the lake with nothing but a cooler, a tent, and my own thoughts. I felt like I was meeting myself again for the first time since I was a teenager. Then one morning, about 9 months after I walked out of Dad's office, I got a text from an old vendor. FYI, he lost the Stedman account. Stedman was our biggest client at the old shop. They brought in nearly 40% of the annual revenue. I knew for a fact they hated inefficiency, and if Ryan was running things like a social experiment, it was only a matter of time before they walked. I texted back, "Who'd they go with?" The reply came 2 minutes later. "You." Turns out, one of my guys had kept in touch with Stedman's operations lead. Told him what we were doing. Showed him a sample, and they decided to take a chance, quietly, without fanfare. That night, I sat in the new office I'd built, just a prefab trailer behind the shop, nothing fancy, and let it hit me. I didn't just have my life back. I had his life, the business, the people, the respect, all of it, and I hadn't stolen a thing. They'd come to me. The first real sign of the collapse came with the Stedman deal, but it was just the beginning. Within a month, 2 more mid-sized contracts jumped ship. I didn't pursue them. They came to me. No drama, no trash talk, just a simple message from one project manager. "We miss working with someone who understands what deadlines actually mean." I never gloated. I didn't need to. Every order we picked up, every weld we finished on time, every hand I shook was another crack in their foundation. The reports I started hearing were bleak. Ryan had hired a marketing manager to rebrand the shop, complete with a new logo and slogan, "Forging the Future." It was embossed on hats, coffee mugs, even a mural in the break room. Meanwhile, machines went unrepaired. Paperwork was late. OSHA violations started to pile up. A welder messaged me on Instagram asking if I had earplugs because the company had run out and wasn't planning on reordering for another month. People were quitting left and right. Some left for me, others just left altogether. Word got out fast. The place wasn't the same. The old-timers couldn't stomach being micromanaged by a guy who didn't know the difference between a TIG and MIG welder. The younger guys didn't respect him, not because he was inexperienced, but because he was fake. He showed up late, left early, and spent more time on conference calls than on the floor. By the 1-year mark, the business was bleeding, and that's when a knock came on my door. It was a Tuesday, late morning. I was working with one of our new guys on a design issue when my assistant came in and said, "Hey, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." I stepped out, and there he was. Dad. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. He was still a broad man, but diminished. Like someone had turned down his brightness. He was wearing the same jacket he always did, except it hung loose on him now. And for the first time in my life, I saw hesitation in his eyes. "Hey," he said. I didn't respond. Just stood there waiting. He cleared his throat. "Can we talk?" Privately, I brought him into my office. Offered him a chair. I didn't sit. He looked around, taking in the space. Clean, efficient, modest, but organized. You could tell a real operation ran here. "This place looks good," he said. I nodded. He looked down at his hands. "Things aren't going well back at the shop." I said nothing. I think I made a mistake," he continued. "Ryan wasn't ready, and I should have seen it, but I didn't want to admit I'd been wrong." I let that hang. He looked up at me. "I know I let you down." Still, I didn't speak. I wanted him to feel the silence, to feel what it was like when someone gave you nothing after you gave them everything. He kept going. "Ryan's talking about selling off equipment to keep things afloat. I don't think he understands what that means. He's over-leveraged, and the bank started calling. If something doesn't change, we're going to lose it all." I asked. My voice was quiet but sharp. He had the decency to flinch. He shook his head slowly. "I need your help. We need your help. I should have handed it to you when I retired. I see that now. And if you come back, even just as a consultant, I think we can turn it around." He looked at me like I was a lifeline, like the same tool he'd pulled off the shelf too many times. But I wasn't that tool anymore. I finally sat down, looked him in the eye. "You know what the worst part was?" I said. "It wasn't that you gave him the business. It's that you never once acknowledged what I did. Not until it was already gone." He swallowed hard but didn't interrupt. "I built everything you had. I kept it alive when you were too tired or too stubborn to change. I gave up my life to carry yours. And when it came time to pass the torch, you handed it to the one person who never held a flame." He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe defend himself, maybe apologize. But I kept going. "I'm not coming back. I got my own people now, my own business, my own life, and we're doing just fine without you." He nodded slowly, didn't argue, just sat there, holding the weight of it all. "I understand," he said. We sat in silence for a while. Then he stood. Before he left, he turned at the door and asked, "If things go under, do you think you'd ever consider buying it?" The old shop. I looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Not interested in fixing someone else's mess anymore." He left without another word. 6 weeks after Dad came to my office, the shop closed its doors. No grand announcement, no farewell statement, just a quiet auction notice posted online and a closed sign duct taped to the front window. It was surreal, like seeing a childhood home boarded up. You expect the past to stay intact, frozen where you left it. But life moves, whether you're ready or not. A few of the guys from the old crew texted me when they drove past. One even joked, "Guess your brother's vision board didn't manifest the rent money." I laughed, but it was bittersweet. I didn't go to the auction. I could have. Part of me wanted to, if only to buy a few of the old tools I'd worked with for so long. But I stayed away. It didn't feel right. That building didn't belong to me anymore, and I didn't want to sift through the wreckage of something I'd already buried. Ryan never reached out. Not once. No apology. No explanation. I figured he couldn't stomach facing me after everything. Or maybe he just didn't care. I'd stopped wasting energy trying to understand him. Dad called one more time. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. Short. Just said, "I'm sorry. You were right." His voice cracked a little near the end. I didn't delete it, but I never called him back either. Some things are meant to be patched over. Some wounds don't need salt or bandages. They just need distance. My life moved on. Ironworks North kept growing. Steady. Strong. We hit our first million in revenue just shy of our second year. We didn't celebrate with balloons or speeches. We grilled burgers in the lot and handed out bonuses. My kind of party. Jake became my business partner officially. We started a training program for local trade school grads. Kids who reminded me of myself at 19, calloused and unsure, but hungry to build something real. Watching them learn, mess up, and keep trying gave me more satisfaction than I ever got from chasing my father's approval. One day, I was showing a new hire how to run the bead on a complex weld when he said, "Man, you ever think about writing a book or something? You got stories, dude." I laughed. I don't think anyone wants to read about welding brackets. He shrugged. "Not the brackets. You. What he came back from." I didn't say much, but that sat with me. Because here's the truth. No one tells you about rebuilding your life. It's not about proving them wrong. That fire only burns so long. Eventually, you rebuild because it's yours. Because it feels good to wake up in the morning and know you're standing on something solid. Something you made with your own hands. There were still hard days, late nights, times I doubted myself, but they were mine, not inherited, not borrowed. Mine. And eventually, I stopped thinking about the old shop, stopped checking who was left, who went where, who blamed who. That chapter closed itself. But just once I did drive by. It was late. The lot was empty. The windows were dark, and the old sign had been taken down. A for lease sticker hung crooked on the door. I pulled over and sat there for a moment, watching the building in silence. I didn't feel rage or bitterness. I just felt free. That place had been a prison disguised as duty, and I'd served my time. As I sat there, I thought about my younger self, the kid who showed up early every day, desperate for his father's approval, who sacrificed everything for a future that was never going to be his. I wish I could tell him, it's okay to walk away. You don't owe anyone your life just because they expected it. Loyalty without respect is just servitude. And more importantly, you're not broken for wanting something of your own. I put the truck in gear and drove home. Back to my life, my work, my people. No more ghosts. Just steel, fire, and freedom. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.